Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Today is Comprehensivist Wednesday that we do in collaboration with the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. Delighted to have my friend Mike back to be talking about improv. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Shrikant, and thank you all for coming out to part 3 of our 4-part series on improvisation. Tonight's episode is called Changing Spaces, Places, and Moods. But before we get into tonight's content, I want to backtrack and I want to go just do a quick preview or review of what we did in week 1, week 2. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to sprinkle in a little of the content that I'm going to be talking about tonight to kind of embellish what we did already. So in week 1, we tackled what I think is the number one concept in improvisation, which is yes and. And to repeat, yes and is basically you're on stage with somebody and you're doing a scene. Somebody has to do something, right? If there's 2 of us on stage, we both just can't look at each other. So if it's an improv setting, you'll get a suggestion from the audience, and that suggestion is whatever. And then one of us is going to talk or produce an action. And if I make the action or with an emotion and I go, oh, I've just given information to my partner, and my partner might say to me, oh, you were out dancing again last night, huh? There's a certain reality that took place there. My partner said I was out dancing last night. And as soon as I go, oh yeah, man, what a night. We have already created something. By my emotion, I have gifted something to my partner. They have to accept that. Or we talked last time about walking into a room and seeing somebody with a raccoon on their head. If I walk in and I say to Shrikant, hey, Shrikant, you're worried about being bald. That's a hell of a raccoon hat you have. Guess what? Shrikant and I are now in a scene where he has a raccoon on his head. It's so important that he accept that and not push it back. Because if he pushes it back and go, oh, no, that's not a raccoon. It's actually...
I tried so many different animals. You know, I started with skunk. And that was the worst of it. Then I tried a bear, and it was just too much. My neck is not powerful enough. So that's how I settled up with this.
You see? So by him taking that in, he is now actually give a hint of what happened in the second week, which was called playing the game. And I'll get to that in a second. But once we give each other that initial gift, whatever it is, it's up to the second improviser to not only accept it, but to take it and heighten it. And that's extremely important, because if you just sit there and go, yeah, it's a raccoon on my head, and just, well, oh, that's great. You know,
the worst thing about having the raccoon on my head, my wife was very upset with me because she thought that was her place. So
now all of a sudden I'm hanging out with a guy whose wife sits on his head. And now we have something to work with. Yes, and I give you something, you accept it, and you heighten it. Now, I took some notes from that first meeting. Here at 52 Living Ideas, because this happens to be about improvisation, the goal is never to limit that focus. It's always, can you take the topic and pull it away? And we usually do that during the Q&A. And what happened last time is we came up with a couple of takeaways that I thought were very important. I want to share those with you. The first one was that we decided that this yes and attitude is actually a mindset. It's sort of creating a positive feedback loop with yourself. Because if you're in a discussion with someone and you're constantly heightening what was said before you, whatever it is that you're creating is getting bigger, it's getting embellished, and it's got more depth. Well, it turns out that you can actually practice that. So we talked last time about creating a scenario for yourself where maybe there's something you want to get good at. You know, I want to be an actor. Okay, so I'm improvising this now. I'm totally making this up. I want to be an actor. You see my shirt? I'm talking by myself, so it doesn't grammatically sound right, but watch what happens. I want to be an actor. Yes. And I do improvisation with a guy named Brian, who grew up with this guy, Chris, who I know was in the theater. And Chris used to live in my neighborhood. Yes. So I called Brian for Chris's number. Yes, Chris picked up the phone. He was happy to hear from his old friend, Mike. This was from 40 years ago. And we happened to get on the subject of, are you still in theater? Yes. And not only was Chris still in theater, but he's actually looking for beginners to teach acting to. Whoa. Now, is all of that going to happen in real life? Probably not. But it's the mindset that works, because if I keep saying yes and to myself, I'm actually going to stop, think about where it is that I am, where I want to go, and then actually look at the steps from A to B. And guess what? A lot of them turn out to be feasible. They turn out to be possible. What we discussed last time was the flip side of yes and, which is, yeah, but you know that feeling? So I suggest to somebody, you know what? I think you would be a really good golfer. You're very limber. Yeah, but to play golf, it takes 4 hours a day. What do you mean? You have a lot of time on the weekend. Yeah, but I usually do chores. You see the difference? Yes, and yeah, but. Now, a great part of that discussion was, we're all realists here. And somebody had brought up that you may have a disagreement with someone, and you're not going to be able to use that yes and mindset there. But that's not what we're talking about. That's kind of an outlying situation. It's the amount of time that you spend in the middle in your everyday life that this mindset actually takes hold. It really, really works. Yes, and remember, when you say yes, you have to add the end. You just have to add something else to the conversation. In week 2 or session 2, we did something called playing the game. So improvisers, when they're on stage, and yes, it can be very scary to walk out in front of a live audience having no idea what it is that they're going to suggest that you do. But we're kind of out there with parachutes. And what I mean by that is, the more that you study improvisation, the more tricks and tools you have to kind of catch each other in the air. And one of the main ones is something called playing the game. Now, the game is something that's hiding underneath in the discussion. I have 3 examples for you. One I did last time, and here are 2 new ones. One is called 2 peas in a pod. Now, we don't come on stage and say to each other, we're going to be 2 peas in a pod. But people with experience in improv know that there are going to be scenes where you and your partner are going to be on the same exact page. Improvisers here tonight might know it by different names. I learned it as 2 peas in a pod. So you're in the audience, you're on stage, and somebody yells out, bank. That's your suggestion. So what I did is I actually took scenes that were improvised in the past, and I'm plugging it in for all of you tonight to show you how that game works. So I'm on stage and somebody in the audience says, your suggestion is bank. That's it. So it's me and a partner. So I'll play both parts. So one turns to the other and goes, we're running out of money, dude. We're going down to Florida. They actually got a boulevard down there called Too Big to Fail. Stop, just stop. So what have I given my partner? Hey, dude, we're running out of money. We're going down to Florida. You know what? They actually have a boulevard down there named Too Big to Fail. It's filled with banks. The other one goes, holy cow, I've wanted to rob a bank my whole life. Information given. Scene has already taken place. Now, where does the 2 peas in the pod come in? I'm thinking there's a place that's got 20 to 30 banks that I can knock off. And my scene partner says, holy cow, I've been wanting to rob banks my whole life. Well, we're in New York. We need money to get down to Florida. Hey, you know what? Let's go knock off the First National on the bank. Yeah, you know what? They have beaches in Florida. You see, connecting Florida beaches. I think that Teller, Tony, he's always tan. That guy, he can probably give us some advice about sunscreen. I got it. I'll go in, I'll hand the teller the note. You pretend to be afraid and go, hey, Tony, how do you stay so tan? You see these two characters, how they're walking lockstep, two peas in a pod. The opposite of that is called playing the straight and the crazy. And by the straight means a normal reaction to anything that happens. The crazy means the crazy. So I improvised a scene with a partner once where the audience, the suggestion was laughter. That's it, laughter. So we're on stage, and here comes an interesting dynamic with improvisers. And I know there are some musicians here. I think Angelo, in the past, I know that you are a seasoned musician. This happens in music a lot too. If musicians are improvising, you kind of learn each other that some are more comfortable initiating, maybe a change in time signature or a key, and others are more interested in following. Well, if you're on stage and you're doing an improv scene, you have the same dilemma, because if we're on stage, one of us has to do something. You know, we can't just stand looking at each other. And you begin to learn that some of your colleagues or friends are more comfortable initiating, others are more comfortable following. But regardless of who steps up first, the yes and principle is going to take over immediately. And once it does, then they start searching for whatever game they're going to play. It just comes naturally. So that particular scene, when the suggestion was laughter, I kind of leaned in. I started to laugh. And my scene partner goes, "Well, you're in a good mood." I go, "Yeah, I thought it would be a lot harder to tell you this, but I actually slept with your girlfriend." And I'm just laughing. That's the crazy. I'm the crazy one, because my partner immediately said yes and by reacting, "Well, how would you react if I'm laughing, going, oh man, I really thought this was going to be so much harder to tell you this." And he goes, "What? You slept with my girlfriend, Gloria?" I go, "Yeah, Gloria. She's an amazing woman." Are you crazy? And I'm just sitting there going, now I'm actually the crazy one. I'm going, "Yeah, it's just amazing how well this is going." He goes, "How well it's going? How well would it be if I came over there and punched you in the nose?" I go, "You know what? That would really hurt. And I've actually never seen you this mad before." "Mad? You slept with my wife. That's incidental. We have to talk about your anger." You see what's happening? I'm absolutely out of my mind. My partner, the crazier I get, the straighter and more serious he gets. That's what creates the comedy. That's the game. The yes end is when I'm laughing to start, my partner is not going to go to me, "Well, you look sad today." "Wow, what?" I'm laughing. "Well, you look happy today." And whatever hits my mind comes out, and he has to take it on. Now, he could have responded in many different ways, right? But by coming at me saying, "You slept with my girlfriend, are you crazy?" I go, "Wow, what a wonderful woman. I mean, but you're my best man." There's information there. Now there's a relationship between the two. I was this guy's best man, and I did something terrible, but I'm not looking at it that way, because her name, I'll probably give her a name, Gloria, is just an absolute sweetheart. "Ma'am, what a job you did picking that woman. Picking that woman, they're going to pick you up out of a grave. Hey, take it easy. Take it easy." That's the straight. That's the crazy. Let's do one more. This one is called high status, low status, which, boy, this one comes up all the time. The way this works is sometimes if you're taking a class, an improv class, which I highly recommend all of you do if you get the chance, the instructors will kind of set this up for you. But with a little experience, that's just another tool that we have in our pocket. In this particular scene, I believe the suggestion was cooking or something along culinary, whatever it was. And so we're two people standing side by side, and my partner had a perfect French accent and came off as a real snob. And I just instantly took over the role of sous chef. If you see my shoulders in the screen, as soon as the scene started, he actually spoke gibberish in French and shouted at me. And I kind of like immediately put my head down and I go like, I don't speak French. He goes, of course you don't speak French, you're American. And, you know, boom, all of a sudden there's a little bit of a game. He's a French chef. He had a perfect accent, by the way. He already knows that I can't cook like he can, and the scene started to proceed. It's going down, and all he did was berate me. Nothing I could do was right. I cut something, I just show it to him, which adds another little sprinkle into improvisation. If we are two chefs and we are standing in front of a cutting board, for example, we are then two chefs standing in front of a cutting board. If I'm going like this, I have a knife in my hand. I can't improvise, like I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands a lot. But if I have a knife with my hand, I can't forget what I'm doing and go like this. Hey, what's going on? Because what happened to the knife that was just in my hand? It just flew way back there. So improvisers have to keep the reality of their physicality and location in mind. So as I'm cutting the knife, he's cutting the knife. He goes, ouch, and he cuts his finger. And when he cuts his finger, he beautifully transitioned from this really pompous, arrogant, incredibly gifted chef into, oh, my finger, oh, I don't think I can bear the pain. It is horrible, oh. And I all of a sudden go, are you kidding me? Oh my God, you're a little bit of blood. It actually looks good with what you're cooking. Grow up, for God's sake. What happened there? Complete status shift. I went from being this poor, lowly sous chef, and what did my partner do? This incredibly pompous, great chef. Oh, my finger, my finger. And whoop, we just switch. And I'm sitting there. I remember going in the scene going, oh, yeah, what's that number? Oh, when you need help. I think there's a 9 in it. 9-1. Oh, I can't think of the other number. And he's sitting there holding his finger. Scene ends. Scene ends. But you see underneath the game, in the first example, 2 peas in a pod. Lockstep. The other one crazy, one straight. The third one, high status, low status, switch. Tonight, what I've already done is given you a background of when we talk about changing places, spaces, and moods. The places part literally means location for tonight's purpose. On Zoom, this is a very difficult thing to do, to create physicality, because we're in these little boxes. But if we were on a stage together, we could introduce some exercises that really focus on what it is that you're doing physically. The places part means your place in the scene. So in the first example, if I am somebody who is a sous chef, now the scene is over, right? So let's say there's 6 improvisers in the group. Well, I leave the group and I'm in the background now, and 2 other people step up and they bring a brand new scene. Well, in 5 minutes or so, I'm gonna have to get back on that stage as somebody entirely different. In the promo video I did for this, I talked about an airline pilot in a waiting room. So for example, the audience might say to you, your suggestion is airport. Okay, so in the promo video, I think I did it, there was a pilot and a passenger, but you don't really know who they are yet. And somebody comes up to the other one and goes, you flying on flight 1416? Now, remember last scene, I was a sous chef, but now I'm on the same stage, but I still don't know who I am yet, because it's a brand new suggestion. I hear airport, my partner initiates the scene. Hey, are you on the flight to LA, number 416? And I just turn around and I look at my partner and I go, yeah, I'm actually the pilot. Now, what is my emotion telling you? Yeah, I'm actually the pilot. And my scene partner says to me, that's your uniform? I go, no, I don't put my uniform until 10 minutes before the plane takes off. Not a second before, not a second after. 10 minutes before it takes off. Passenger goes, really? Oh, yeah. Well, don't you have to check everything to make sure it's working? I got a co-pilot. That's what they do. But listen, I don't have much time. I got to get on the plane soon. And then I just kind of stop and my partner goes, oh, man. All of a sudden, now there's a game going on, right? You've got this pilot who's, what is he? What is she? Is he superstitious? Is he paranoid? There's already a little game that's mixed in there, but it's also mood and emotion that's switched. So when I mentioned in the promo, you're changing moods. 5 minutes ago, I was this high status, low status sous chef. Now I'm a pilot that is afraid to fly. So I don't even have to continue with the rest of the scene. But for a moment, just if you all don't mind, take a second or two and imagine a couple of things that might come out of that pilot's mouth. How might that scene proceed from there? So I've set you up a little bit. And if you don't mind, just type exclamation in chat. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that character. Let's kind of stretch that character out a little bit. The only thing I said, I'm not getting on that plane, not a minute, second before, a second later. That's it. What else can you tell me about that pilot? Evanique?
He or she may have a little bit of OCD.
And what else could you do, Evanique, to kind of embellish that? How else would that manifest itself in that scene?
Well, you could look at him and say he has OCD. So then, the person talking to him could figure, well, I'm in good hands because he's totally going to be able to man that plane. Like he's totally going to be in control. He's not going to let anything go wrong. I feel so secure because he is so meticulous about it.
So you're taking the positive view that you're in my camp. You're in my camp and you're going to go with me. Now, here's the cool thing. If you do that, then it's up to me as the recipient of that, because I should be able to feel your attitude and kind of work off of that. So you're in his camp. Good. Becky, what's going on with this airline pilot and passenger?
I would say the passenger would pat him on the back, say, well, good luck. And then he's going to completely freak out. Oh my goodness, you touched me. You touched me.
Very good.
I need to do some other routine for like the next 30 minutes.
Very good. So again, from both of those are two different perspectives, but it would be up to that pilot to kind of grab onto it. Both studying and practicing improv is you're constantly in the shoes of somebody else. Ray, what's going on with the pilot and that passenger? Oh, you're muted, my friend.
Oh, he's afraid of heights.
Afraid of heights.
Got a sudden fear of heights.
Right. Perfect. Perfect. You have a pilot who's afraid of heights. Does he close his eyes on takeoff?
He's starting to.
Right. Anybody else? Like what's going on with this pilot? You can take it in any direction you want. Allison.
It's like he goes into Hitchcock with the birds. He's like the birds, the plane, Scully. He's going to land the plane on the Hudson River. It's going to be his time to shine.
There you go. Which is something very interesting. You mentioned Hitchcock, right? Is that what you said? Yeah, which is very interesting because I improvise with a lot of young people that are in their 20s. And
Yeah.
sometimes you're on stage, and if the audience has people in their 20s, and I'll go, yeah, you know, it's like the movie The Birds from Hitchcock, and you see some people kind of looking at you like, what? So yeah, it's very funny. Brian, what's going on with these two?
The pilot just got he just got fired from his last airline, and this is his first flight on the new one.
Ah, nice, nice. Yeah, very good. And Brian, what if you gave that line to the passenger? What kind of reaction do you think you would get?
A curious, like, how'd you lose your job, and how do you feel, and
Yeah,
prep, how was the transition, that sort of thing.
yeah, great. Mark, what's going on?
Well, he's got this fear of Alanis Morissette, and she comes on board the plane.
Ah, nice. Alanis Morissette finds her way onto the stage. Awesome. Mr. Bullock, what's happening with these two?
You know, I'm going to build off of Brian. He just got his pilot license reinstated.
Okay.
So now the other person's flipping out.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, isn't it ironic?
Yeah, yeah.
Very
Yeah,
good, Mark.
very-
Yeah, very good. That's perfect. Yeah, yeah. I see. It's amazing how, you know, one suggestion all of a sudden in our minds, that kind of pops in. And you'd be amazed, the more improvising you do, you can access those memories that you have. The idea would be to fit them into the scene without doing two things. One, you don't want to steamroll your partner. Steamrolling is when you're on stage with someone. And again, to make another connection to music, boy, oh boy, when you have musicians that are improvising, you will hear them sometimes going, oh my goodness, I couldn't get a note in. We're supposed to be trading fours. Like I didn't play one measure, you know. But the same thing in improvisation, where you have an idea, you don't want to really jam it home. You have to remember that, you know. So that Alanis Morissette, that's a perfect segue. You just have to make sure that you don't keep adding to that until the other person comes back. Yeah, that's really, really good. All right, so let's try this. Shrikant, if you have any, I have some exercises that I definitely want to throw in. But if you have any comments that you want to make before.
I think this is going amazingly well. And
Great.
I love the way in which everybody else is, you know, putting things in. So please go on.
Perfect. All right, great. So let's do the following. If you volunteer, if you put an exclamation point in chat, I want you to do the following for me. I want you to pretend that you have a phone in your hand. You're going to pick up the phone and you're going to go, hello. And you're going to receive first what you think is really bad news, like something you did not want to hear. You did not want to hear it. The audience has no idea what it is that you heard because it's just you. So a little suggestion is don't rush and just be, you know, once you're there. So you do the following. This is bad. I'll go first. Just an example. Hello? Oh, geez. Are you serious? Then, as soon as you're done with the negative, I want you to do the same thing. Pause, take a breath, look at Allison because she doesn't have a wedding ring. I proposed and didn't buy the ring. So you can look at Allison maybe to put a smile on your face before you do the second part. Do the reverse. Pick up the phone. Hello? What? Really? Oh, that's awesome. That's it. You're done. And then I'll call on who's ever next. Pick up the phone. Hello? React to really crappy news. Pause. Look at Allison. Smile. Pick up the phone. React to bad news. That's it.
Let us do that.
All right. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Well, all right, folks. So this has been number 3 of Improv series in the Improv series by Mike. So what do you think? What do you think of Improv? How is it different from your normal day-to-day functioning? What do you get out of it? Any thoughts? What do you think about today's exercises? What did you think about, you know, having the space, you know, kind of getting the physical context right, getting the emotional context right, and how does it allow you to kind of root it, root your expression in that context. So anything you want to talk about, go ahead and type exclamation mark and we can go from there. Brian.
So I thought this was really amazing. I signed up because I thought it was Self-Improvement Wednesday.
Brian, you take bad news really well, by the way.
Yeah, and but wow, so this was a total surprise for me, and it's really been a very pleasant surprise. It's exciting that I don't know, that just doing it I thought was really fun. I think the idea of yes and is brilliant, and I guess wearing my 52 living ideas hat, the idea occurs to me, wow, we could be using this all the time in our lives in a lot of different ways. Yes and instead of yes but. So I thought this was, and it'd just be fun to do more. And that's another thought I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to share your thoughts. I mean, the thing that really blows me away is the amount of creativity that everybody has. It's just like they come up with something that I would never have thought of. And what happens is that each person has a style of expression, and it is so unique to them. So they bring that style whenever they do any kind of improv, and it just shows through. So that's amazing. And of course, yes and principle is a huge principle. And I think it's far more deeper than the improv. Improv is riding on the top. This idea in improv, yes and, is riding on the top of a much deeper idea of saying, your willingness to really say yes to another person, of actually accepting who they are and feeling free to express who you are. And what it leads to is something really magical. So go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to add something. We'll start with Mike. Mike, what do you think? This is this is a very unusual group of people that you've been doing improv with, which is very different from the most of your improv troops. What is it like?
Yeah, it's wow. For me, I think well, there's two ways to take it. It's one, it's the actual process of what we're doing here, but it's also the takeaway I get for preparing for these meetups. So one thing that I've talked about, even I have some really good friends here, and one thing that improv has helped me with over the years is getting to the point where you are willing to take the step, even though you're very unsure of yourself. And what I have found, what I used to feel is when I was in high school, for example, I would not read in front of a class. I would fail a class before I had to read. And then ironically, I became a teacher, so I'm in front of people all the time. But what used to happen to me was, even as a musician, I would sometimes deal with performance anxiety or any kind of social anxiety. And I would get to the point where, okay, now it's time to do what it is that's scaring me. And then I would find at the end of the event, I would go, I got through it. And I'd feel really good that I got through it. But what improv has actually done for me is it's made that much better. I still feel uneasy getting on stage, but that feeling of, oh man, this is not bad at all, happens as soon as I start to perform. So it's not at the end of the event. It's as soon as you take that initial step, which is very scary. But once you do it, it's like getting on the dance floor at a wedding, right? Once you're on the dance floor, you're having a blast. The same thing, Shrikant, has happened with me with improv, where I still have the angst and the anxiety, but the minute I take the first step, I fill up. And that propels me through the rest of the night, if that makes sense. So that's a takeaway.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Let's go with Mark, followed by Allison and Becky. Mark, what do you think?
I think this was great. I didn't know there were two previous sessions. I haven't been around for a while. It's great to see everybody who I haven't seen in a while. Yeah, I didn't know that there were two previous sessions. I guess I haven't been keeping up. And I thought this was fantastic. I always have thought that people who can do improv successfully were just masters. I mean, you know, I once did a stand-up comedy event. It was kind of a workshop, and you graduated by actually doing it. But to me, when I worked through the act, you know, you write things down and you hone it for a while, and it was funny at one point, you know that, because people laughed and they said it was good and you thought it was good yourself. But you rehearse it so much over and over and over again just to get it just right that you kind of lose track of, if it wasn't ever funny, it's not funny to me anymore. It's stale to you. And I'm not a good enough actor that can make this sound fresh for the first time after I've said something 100 times. I don't like telling the same story over and over again. And that's why I thought that people who can do improv are just amazing geniuses, because, you know, to be able to memorize something and have it honed to perfection and go up every night and say the same thing and wind yourself up and pretend it's new, that is not as big a deal to me as somebody who can just react, not just to new situations, but to other people. And it's like, I'm not a musician myself, but what it seems to me like is what I've heard people describe as in playing in jazz bands. You know, yeah, you are going back and forth and you're taking each other's stuff. And I'm sorry if this analogy was made already because I came in late, but it seems that that is what's great about it, is it's, you know, it's putting all of your you know, your ideas and your creativity in a vat, and try to mix it with other people's and see what you can make. And it's pretty awesome. So thank you for having this, and I hope there are more.
Yeah, Mark, firstly, delightful to see you again. Secondly, I wanted to comment on three things. The first thing is, you know, one of the charms of improv is that you are interacting live with another live human being. And this yes and principle is all about bouncing off, where you're actually open. It's not like you're coming in with everything that you're going to say, but you're putting something out as best as you can, and then really listening what the other person is saying and just reacting to them and responding to them and adding your own thing. So it's like, once you get the hang of it, it is like, it's very natural, actually. The second thing is about this rehearsing. I want to point out one interesting thing. There is this entire acting technique, Meisner technique, where what the actors do is that they basically work on getting the lines perfect. Okay, so you have the lines in your memory. But then what you do is that you interact with people in a very natural way. You are actually trying to interact with another human being, and you are hanging those lines of the reality of actual interaction between two human beings. And that is magical. And so what that does is that really makes those lines, which both parties know really, really well, they make it come alive. So it's dramatically different. And the last point is, I love the analogy of jazz. That's exactly how it is. Because what happens is that each person brings something to the table, but the other person will take the line that the first person gives them and add something, their own flavor, their new innovations, and the first person that listens to it adds something more, and it just goes on like that. So it's beautiful. Thank you, Mark. Next up is Allison.
Yeah, I think this is so much fun. I really do. It's nerve-wracking though, because it's like you've got to come up with something so fast. But what it reminds me of a lot of, I was thinking, is any sort of a partner dance. Not like when you just go on a dance floor and you're just dancing, you know, freestyle or whatever, but things like swing dancing, zydeco, salsa, any of those, because you really have to pay attention to what the other person's doing, and then you're reacting to it, and then they're reacting to what you do. And it's like, you're really reacting to them and then building on it. And, you know, like, I guess like with jazz, but it's a similar thing in dance. And it, you know, a really good partner makes you much better, you know, and anyway, it's just so much fun. So thanks so much, Mike.
Wonderful. I like the dance analogy. Thank you. Next up is Becky, Joe, and Jacob. Becky.
I have a question to throw into the mix
Sure.
is that like when you're improvising, what are some indicators that that perhaps the partner isn't going to be a good mesh? Because like you mentioned, like they sometimes throw it back at you, but like maybe naturally there are certain partners that you do work better with. And is it more of the embracing of the yes and, or is it also something else? But the takeaway that I had was like being you mentioning that you had fears of presenting is something that I had and probably still have. And the improv does allow you to move outside of your natural fear, because it adds that separation. You're someone else, and when you get really deep into it, you forget about everything else around. And so that association, that free flowing, that once that fear melts away, the creativity comes out. So that was my takeaway.
Mike, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah. As an amateur, so I just started recently performing again. You probably won't be asked to perform unless you're comfortable kind of being flexible enough. So anybody that you're on stage with at that point where you're actually at the performance level, and again, it's not Carnegie Hall, you could be performing in front of a very small group, but usually everybody that's there has enough experience that they can kind of bend off each other enough so that the audience won't pick it up. But there are clearly favorite people to improvise with, or more favorable. For me personally, it's if it's somebody that I like outside of improv, like really like and get along with, it's much easier. And for example, a lot of times when we first get on stage, there could be an MC, for example, Becky, who's getting the suggestions from the audience. What I always do is I look at whoever I'm going to improvise with and smile, because and they'll usually smile back because we genuinely like each other. And when you genuinely like each other, then the mistakes that you make, I think it was it Wynton Marsalis who did he had an excellent, was it a documentary or something? There's no mistakes on the bandstand. I don't know where I've got this in my head, but pretty sure it was him who said it, that when you're with somebody that you really like, you won't make a mistake, because you both know that you're out there together, if that makes sense. If there's somebody who's very technical and who's real serious about their improv and they want to get really good, which is great, but sometimes you get people that tend to be a little bit more critical of the art and a little less concerned with what the audience pulls away, right? Because there is a certain dilemma. You have a paying audience in front of you. Are you there to produce content for them, or are you to produce content for the art? So that sometimes creates a problem with who you're improvising with. Why are they on stage? For the audience, for the art, or for some other reason? So hopefully that little jumble answered the question.
Thank you, Mike. Becky, I mean, I don't have that much experience with improv, but I have experience with a very low-level amateur kind of improv, and which is actually much more challenging because not everybody is going to be good, and not everybody has bought into the idea of improv either. So they don't know yes and sometimes, and all of that. And the general attitude that I take is that it's in your interest to keep doing yes and. So keep offering, they will do whatever they do, and then you keep doing yes and. And what happens is that over time they might get a little bit, but the thing is that you have to keep improvising. It's like life. It's like it is wonderful when there is. I mean, take music for example. It is wonderful when your styles match, and you have a lot of experience with each other, and you like the way in which you produce music. And then what you can do together is at a much, 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 much higher level. But that doesn't mean that if there isn't that kind of a match, you just give up. you still do your music. You keep doing your best, and that's how I think about it. Thank you, Becky. Next up is going to be Joe, Jacob, Ray, and Evanique. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just make a quick comment. I mean, this is a lot of fun. I think that one thing that it's a demonstration of courage, because that you're dealing with uncertainty and unknowns when you're just putting words up there. So, your tolerance level, the more that you do this, the more that you start to have this type of conversation, or to do these, routines, the more confidence that you're actually going to have in other conversations, but your ability to also to deal with uncertainty in general, I think would be improved by the overall experience. I think that that's a very important point, because it really does. You're able to tap into your own emotions as well. In addition to that, I think once you once you're really in the flow. So that so anyway, those are just some thoughts.
Thank you, Joe. I mean, that's a great point. What happens is it loosens you up a little bit. You've become a little bit more intrepid. You realize that falling on your face is not that bad. Like, even like you say, okay, you screwed up, but okay, it's like a little bit of embarrassment. Didn't really hurt you much. So wait a minute, why don't I do it more? Something like that. So it's like there are some things that carry over. And what happens is that we are an integrated being. So if you do such exercises, then you become a little bit more loose in your expression, instead of being too, instead of kind of stopping you too much, it allows you to experiment a little bit more than you would otherwise. So great point. Thank you. Jacob, I know you've just come in. You have a comment about improvisation?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Okay. There are two types of improv. There's the fake improv. It's what passes, it's what ordinarily passes for improvisation. And then there's the true improv. The fake improv is coming from a brain that has stuff. It has what it knows, skill, knowledge, experience. And its action, that stuff is acting. It can be acting from the distant past, or it can be acting now in the immediate present, which then passes for fake improv. Now, true improv is happening when the brain is free from the known. It knows nothing. And then that brain that is free acts. That action is improvisation. Simple.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. That's a very, very fascinating comment. So let me build up on that. See, it's a question of, the conscious and the subconscious, the conscious and the unconscious, and how deep you can go. So there is improvisation where you're trying to put together something which is kind of jury rigged, which is interesting, fascinating, funny at one level. But then there is an improv. Like, for example, some of the greats, you can see that very clearly in music, right? There are people who can do music at a very low level. They will do these little things, which are display of what they can do, of their skills. And that's all that it is. But then there are true, deep musicians who, when they improvise, there is something new about consciousness that they're bringing out in their expression. So there is this entire range of how deep you can go with expression. Thank you. Next up is going to be Ray. Ray, go ahead.
Hey, so first of all, this was great. This was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and thank you guys for having me. Jacob said something really interesting. I'm a musician also, and I was a soloist, and I did my best playing when there's less than a measure left till it's my turn to start to play, and I don't have the first clue as to what I'm going to play. So there's that terrifying and delicious, icy feeling that you have, and you kind of need to make your mind blank, you know, and it's there. And when it's your time, you just go. And I often just didn't know where I was going to even start. Just kind of let the music carry me. It sounds a little corny, but it really, I mean, literally, you know, 2 notes left and I don't know what I'm going to play. And so it really comes down to confidence a lot and relaxation, doesn't it? I mean, if you're able to relax yourself or to clear your mind and your being enough to, I know Mike long enough to know that he was always really good at that. You know, you could just clear everything else out of the way and react. And I don't know, it just seems like most things work better in life when you're able to take that half step back and just let it go for a second and then react. For me anyway. So anyway, this was great. Thank you all.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ray. Next up is Evanique.
Yeah, I think tonight was absolutely great. And like one of the things I thought about is the practical aspect, like how you bring it to your everyday life. And for me in my job, like I could go in with a plan and it could switch on a dime. An email will totally derail the plan for the day. And the thing that has helped not only in this improv, but in the first 2 weeks of improv is just to go with the flow. And in a sense, not have an emotion about it. And I know that's weird because improv, you're expressing emotions, but you realize like with these exercises, is like, the real question is like, what are you giving power to? Because like even tonight when we had to go from happy to mad to happy again, it was like, you know, I thought about it after I did the exercise and I'm like, some of the things that I get really emotional about aren't worth getting emotional about. You just have to go in and do it. Like Sharikant said, it's called falling on your, like sometimes you just got to be willing to fall on your face and take the emotion out of that and just, you know, learn from it and move from it. I think improv gives you that. Like if you were to practice improv on a regular basis and you just have to think on your feet and you have to switch and you have to come up with solutions, you're more willing to just put your ideas out there without really overthinking it. And I think that is like the beauty of improv, is the beauty of what you do tonight, Mike, is you allow the participants in this meetup to kind of like, it's fun because you get to take a break and just kind of like think off the top of your head, and whatever comes out as crazy as it is, and you create a safe space that can happen. And so you could take that out into the real world. And I shouldn't say the real world, this is the real world too, but like you could take this out in your daily lives and really just, you know, kind of just go with the flow in a sense, or, you know, be able to think on your feet or be able to act or react as needed and not think too much about it. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Evanique. Really appreciate that. So firstly, Mike, if you can give a preview of the next one.
Sure. So basically what we had here tonight and what we've had from the very beginning of this series are people who really knew little or, you know, very little about improvisation in terms of, you know, they're not doing it on a regular basis, right? So there's the opportunity in the 4th series to kind of bring all of these things together. So we kind of started as a 101, a group activity to kind of improvise and think on our feet. And that started with the first episode, which was Yes and, right? So the next one was something called the game, which is kind of something you can latch on to continue a conversation, sort of like bumpers in bowling. It gives you some structure to carry the conversation on with. And tonight, basically trying to work on your emotions and learning how to justify why something would switch in real life. You know, why would you be mad about something? And if you become mad at something that should make you happy, that makes you laugh. That creates humor, right? There's a little dissonance there. It doesn't make sense that my 105-year-old aunt is still alive. I should be jumping for joy, but you know, Ray was upset because he doesn't get the apartment. That's where the humor comes in. So the next one is really a wrap up. You know, it's called bringing it all together. So we basically take a group of people from in 4 steps and basically say, hey, look, here are some basic guidelines, some basic tools. Here's a way to sprinkle in some emotion, and here's some structure. So now what do we do with that? What do we do with that? Well, we can actually write a scene. We can create, because a lot of sketch comedy that you see on TV, so it's scripted, right? You know, sketch, you have, as Mark was talking about, how a stand-up will go out with written material. Well, a lot of the shows on TV, a sitcom, these people, they're reading off a script and sometimes they're improvising, but a lot of times you'll have writers sitting around in the back and they're improvising. They're just improvising. And some of the funniest stuff, it sort of gets to the point where Jacob was talking about, where these really talented people are pulling these things out of their subconscious that if you sat down to write it, you're not going to be able to do it. It just comes out sometimes through free-flowing improvisation. And how many musicians would say that you have some of these really famous songs that we all know? It doesn't matter the genre, but how do those songs originate? A lot of times you have somebody noodling on a piano. They might even be a piano player. They might just be playing chords, whoop, and something hits. And the next thing you know, they've created a sketch or a song or a piece of music. So what I want to try to do in the 4th one, Shrikant, is bring it all together and see if at the end of the meetup that we can actually create a sketch or a scenario. Now that sounds counter to improv, but it's not, because nobody here knows how we're going to get there. We'll just get together, review the concepts, throw some ideas out and say, hey, that was a catchy line. I really like the idea of what you just did. And then see at the end if we've actually created something. So kind of putting everything together. And then I think most importantly, if there are people that are interested in furthering their exposure to improv, I would kind of like to provide that to them. You know, taking you from beginner, you live in New York City, there's improv on every street corner in the city and in other places. So that's basically it, bringing it all together in round 4. And then taking a look outward beyond that.
Wonderful. So folks, I want to talk about one more meetup that is taking place that we are working on, which is connected with this. And people don't think of the connection here mostly, but we're doing a series of meetups on language, about expression. And what I want to do is I want to connect up the improv idea, you know, things that we heard about, kind of the physical setting, etc., with language. We're going to be looking at 2 series of books. When one is work called Clear and Simple as the Truth. And second one is a series of books on metaphors by people like George Lakoff. So I want to show you how kind of the physical domain is used to shape our language. So for example, in improv, you'll find that people who can actually situate themselves physically and build a physical location, they are able to do a much more integrated improv that is much more real, much more powerful. And that is actually very much true of language itself. And that's the point that George Lakoff and his co-author make in Metaphors That We Live By. And then the work of, I think it is Mark Tucker and his co-author in this Clear and Simple. Yes, Clear and Simple as the Truth. What they hold, what they are arguing is that all linguistic expression or understanding starts with our bodily expression and senses, our expression of embodied living. And then all the conceptual stuff is built off it through what they call conceptual building. And both these series of, both these works, which are separate lines, they're actually pointing to the same thing. And it's really, really fascinating to see how it operates. You can look at people like Owen Barfield that we are studying, talk about the power of language to cause a change in consciousness. And when you look at language from the past, it will have that impact on you because it's a different mind approaching the world. And they're doing it in a much more simple and direct way. We have all these words built on the top, and we don't really know the history of the words. We take those words almost as corpses instead of living things that they are. And we miss much of the meaning even when we are speaking it out aloud. This is all about kind of going back to how the words are put together, how they're connected to physical expression, or physical act of living, and to try to incorporate that in our expression. That's what this series is about. So just to give you some examples, physical orientation. So there is up and down. It's really profound to just map out how many ways in which we use just up and down to discuss things like emotions, social interaction, thought, containers, what is contained in what. The idea of there is a start, there is a source, there is a path and a goal. So this movement, like the entire story narratizations are built off that transition. The idea of balance, that you can be in balance or out of balance. The idea of center and periphery that we found extremely useful when we were looking at Tao Te Ching, Bhagavad Gita, and the Gospel of John. The idea of front and back, near and far, things like that. So I want to read out to you the example of what up and down is to illustrate this point. And then I'm going to invite you guys to join whenever we do these meetups. I'm expecting to start in about a couple of weeks. So happy is up, sad is down. And all of these actually are used physically. You will see actors use this and you will see it expressed in language. So happy is up, sad is down. So you say, I'm feeling up, that boosted my spirits, my spirit arose. You're in high spirits, thinking about her gives me a lift. I'm feeling down, I'm depressed. He's really low these days. He fell into a depression, his spirit sank. Physical base of this is that a drooping posture typically goes along with sadness, and an erect posture goes with a positive emotional state. Similarly, consciousness is up, unconscious is down. Get up, wake up, I'm up already. He dropped off to sleep, he's under hypnosis, he sank into a coma. So see how physical movements are being used to describe this. Health and life are up, sickness and death are down. He's at the peak of the health. He rose up from the dead. He is in top shape. He fell ill. He's sinking fast. He came down with the flu. His health is declining. He dropped dead. So it goes on and on. Having force, having control is up. Being under control is down. More is up, less is down. Foreseeable future events are up or ahead. High status is up, low status is down. Good is up, bad is down. Virtue is up, depravity is down. He's high-minded, she has high standards, she's upright. Don't be underhanded. I wouldn't stoop to that. That's beneath me. He fell into an abyss of depravity. That was a low down thing to do. So it just goes on and on about how deeply integrated these physical relations are. We are embodied beings. We are living beings. And all the things that we construct in terms of language are rooted in that. Though language grows tremendously and becomes incredibly rich, that living component, if you connect to that, you have full expression. Otherwise, you're just passing around coins which have lost their imprint. They have been, passed around too much. All right. So any thoughts about this? You're welcome to type an exclamation mark to comment on this part, or any questions, any thoughts?
Yeah, do we see the fact that the me, the observer, the self, the higher consciousness, the lower consciousness, doesn't matter, the subconscious, it's all this bundle of active memory, that it is the block that is preventing the flow. I am the block. The I is the block. The thinker, the mind, the consciousness is the limiting factor, right? And so I'm always acting from limitation, imitation, fragmentation, right? So the question then becomes, if you see this, can the brain body free itself from this accumulative memory, this active memory, which is the observer, the perceiver, the listener, the experiencer, the chooser, the observer, right? Can it do that? Is it possible for the brain to do that, right? And does it take time? Or it happens fast in the speed of light? It can happen now, right? So what will make it happen now, right? What is the action, right? So that in freedom, then freedom will act. The Tao will act, the flow, the Holy Spirit will act. You get it? These are just different words for the same intelligence, the cosmic intelligence, moving, acting. So then thought will be the product of that intelligence. Right now, thought is the product of the thinker, that consciousness, the lower consciousness, whatever level of consciousness. It's this bundle of active memory. It's the past. It's a dead thing. And that is the block. So when that comes to an end, then there's the sacred. You get it?
Thank you. Thank you, Jacob.
Now
So
the question,
comment.
yeah.
Go ahead and comment. You had a question? Go ahead. You said you had a
what is the reality though? The brain body is clinging for dear life to the me. It says, this is my security, right? It thinks it's under a delusion that the me will provide its security, right? But the fact is the me is actually multiplying insecurity. So can there be an insight into this? And in the very insight, freedom.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. So let me respond. I mean, this is incredibly complex topic. This is basically what we've been looking at in the Tao, Tao Te Ching. We went through Tao Te Ching. We looked at Bhagavad Gita. We looked at the Gospel of John. It's a question of what is the spirit, what is the center, what is the periphery, what is the Tao, 10,000 things, what is Atma, what is Brahma on one hand, and what is Maya, or manifestations on the other hand. Are you able to distinguish between them? Do you know what Holy Spirit is? Do you know how it, so all of these are behind this. So it is.
I just wanted to let you know you froze for a few seconds there, so we didn't get what you were saying.
Sure.
Just to let you know.
It is. So this is incredibly complex, and the answer to that, I mean, my favorite answer to that, approach to that, is that of Louis Sullivan, which says form follows function. What you have to do is that you have to keep going back to the function and start over from there. It will generate, by its nature, it needs to generate forms in order to create things, in order to do things. Like 10,000 things are, names are needed for creating 10,000 things. And you have to be aware of that. Now, in midst of all of this, there are all kinds of views. There are views like the Platonic views that hold that the spirit and matter are completely separate. So there is a lot of views, and which have tremendous consequences, exactly opposite consequences if you get it wrong. Okay, so it's a very, very deep thing. So wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't hold to the
no, no,
view that
give me just a second. I don't want to go too far into this because this is about improv. And what I was trying to do was to give a preview of what we are going to be doing. And so,
but if I may say, improv is the movement of the spirit. Is spirit happening? Spirit is happening. Soul is happening. Heart is happening. Love is happening. And that's just different words. Improv is just another word for that movement.
absolutely. Thank you. So what I want to say is that this language is a very large idea. And if you'd like to join, we're going to start this. I think current plan is to start it on October 13th, that 13th or 14th, whatever this Thursday is. We're going to start that. I also want to tell you about the other series that we are doing. Basically, we are wrapping up our meetup on Gita. We have the last 2 sessions coming up on Thursday and Friday, where we are going to summarize Gita chapter by chapter. So we've finished up to chapter 6. So it's going to be 6 chapters each on Thursday and Friday. And then we have to figure out what to do on Thursdays and Fridays. So what we're going to do is we have moved the Divine Feminine series that Brian and Evanique are doing to once a month on Fridays, and they are going to start on October 14th. We are also moving the self-improvement Design Your Life series to Fridays. I don't know if Joe, you guys have picked the date. Is it going to be the following Friday after that?
I believe so, yes. It'll be the third Friday of each month.
Yeah, so it basically second Fridays of the month is going to be the Divine Feminine. And then third Fridays is going to be Design Your Life. We have space for more meetups, 2 more meetups on Fridays. So if you are interested, especially if you're a regular and are interested in coming up with any themes that would be of interest to this particular group, please, talk to me, and we can come up with something. So I'm really looking for not just ideas of you should do this or somebody else should do this, but I would like to do this. If you want to do that, you're welcome to do that. So please reach out to me. You can talk to me now if you want. We can talk about it now if you want, but that's certainly something. I want to tell you, Joe, just give me 1 second, and then Mike. So you know what? Let me go to Joe and Mike first. So Joe.
So one of the things that maybe we had talked about a couple different books. And I know that you've covered some of the things in person, like Ray Dalio's Principles.
I'm happy to do it again. I mean, if there is enough interest, and Dalio, definitely there would be enough interest in that Principles book.
Yeah, that might be something on a Friday night that once a month, try and go through. That might be something that would be worthwhile. So,
Mike, what do you think?
I actually had a question that I forgot to cover earlier. I was going to ask people in the audience, who's improvising outside of, being on a stage doing improvisation? There are musicians here, there are dancers here, there are poets here. Is there anybody, improvising outside of what I provided tonight? Especially musicians, dancers, poets that might want to give their approach to improvisation from that different discipline. I'm especially interested in music, but I don't know if there's other people that are improvising.
Okay, Jacob, you're raising your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm both a musician, singer, and dancer. And so, yeah, that's when it's happening, but it can also happen throughout your life, 24/7. You can live this way. So not just when you're jamming, but you can jam in your whole life. When you go to work, when you go to school, wherever you go, it's happening. Spirit is happening, improvisation is happening, which means what? Total attention. total clarity, total presence, total listening, right, is happening. And that total attention acts. The action is not coming from the stuff, your beliefs, your ideas, your concepts, your experiences, your opinions, your points of view. It's being informed moment to moment by what is, by direct contact with what is, the isness. So it's a direct perceiving and action, one movement, not two movements, one movement. There's no interpreter, no translator, no one giving words, comparing, analyzing, evaluating. Pure perception, pure action, which is effortless, choiceless, timeless. From moment to moment, it's happening. It's not an experience which has a beginning and an end, right? It's a pure experiencing, right? A sense of oneness with all beings, a sense of communication, right? With the birds, the cloud, the tree, your enemies, right?
Thank
No
you.
division, no sense of division, no sense of separation, right? Then it's happening. You get it? It's happening. You get it? It happens of its own when you're not there. You get it? The me wants to do it. You get it? The me is the block, and it thinks it's going to achieve it by doing XYZ methods, techniques, practices. It will do meditation. It says pray, chant, do yoga. It thinks it's going to get it. So can I have an insight that it is the block? Full stop. In the full stop, that's when it happens. You get it?
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Jake.
you, Jacob. Angelo, did you raise your hand? Was I right early to remember you from a prior meetup about music? Your background's quite extensive. Oh, you're muted, Angelo.
Angelo, can you unmute? Yeah.
I'm unmuted. Yeah, we were talking about, I don't know, the universe being sound. Remember that? I think
Yeah.
that was, yeah. Okay. I have a question for you, Mike.
Sure.
I have a talent. I'm kind of a natural mimic,
Okay.
but I can only do it when it's part of what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? In other words, if I'm telling a story and there's a person I'm talking about, I can go into their voice, their mannerisms and all of that, just like that. I just do it because I feel that it adds to the story. And people say, man, you sound just like that guy. You know what I mean? But I can't do it on, like, you know, it's like saying, say something funny.
Right.
You know,
Sure.
belly button is my go-to. You know, everybody laughs at that. But
Right.
I'm saying, how do you develop a way of being able to just do that? If someone says, oh, you do a great impression of that guy, go ahead, do that. I said, no, I'm not gonna do, I don't feel it. You know what I mean? It has to be part of the flow. Something like Jacob is saying, it has to be part of the flow. It just happens, you know. And
That's you probably have a reputation from being around people who have seen you do that, right? So when you're in that flow, so when you're surrounded by people who know that you can do that,
yeah,
it's somebody on the outside every now and then that's going to say to you, Angelo, be funny. And it's really annoying when that happens, but you have to be polite, you know, because people have seen you interact and improvise and mimic when you're in flow. So you just have to expect it. I don't really have an answer other than just
okay,
kind of do it. That would be my answer to you, because I've had it happen. You know, you have people in families that are known to be the funny one in the family, or you know,
yeah.
is that kind of what you're saying? Is like, how do you produce it when you're not feeling the flow?
Yeah, it's not necessarily humor. I mean, that's, you know, a different thing.
Yeah.
But it's a certain skill, you know, like I can make any kind of sound. I can do accents, things like that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't do it unless it's part of the
right.
the moment. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just you're doing it. But I'm thinking of how would you do that? How would you develop the thing where someone says, "Oh, tell that," or "Do that," you know, and you say, "Oh, yeah," and you just go right into it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's confident.
I
Maybe
think
it's
where you're
confident.
going I think what would answer that is what Mark Ziss was talking about earlier, when you have the stand-ups and the ones who are more the scripted performers, where it's in their toolbox, where somebody can say, hey, do that imitation. Then you have to ask yourself, do I want to spend time at home working on this specific imitation? Because that me being a mimic is now part of my persona. Then it's up to you to actually have that ready to go at a moment's notice. It sounds to me like you won't feel as genuine if you did that.
That's, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the dilemma. Do you want to be polished and practiced, or do you want to kind of work it out from flow? Yeah, it's
You know,
tough.
it's interesting is that George Carlin, who's considered like greatest comedian, I don't think so, but
Yeah.
Lenny Bruce was better. But anyway, George Carlin writes out every word that he says on the stage, every word. And he goes over it again and does it again, memorize it. People think he's like so, just extemporaneous. No, it's every word is written out. He said he sits down and every single word, he goes back. If that didn't work, he fixes the word. He's not like Lenny Bruce was more of a spritzer.
Mhm.
He used to just.
Angelo, if you don't mind me asking, how does all this fall in your world musically in terms of improvisation? Are you a jazz musician? Are you comfortable improvising any?
Yeah, I don't do too much anymore. I mean, back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a bass player.
Mhm.
And it's always a bass player is like not noticed, but we can change the whole thing around. Really, people think it's a drummer. You're a drummer, right? People think,
yeah.
Yeah, people think it's a drummer that's.
No.
But the feel comes to bass. You just go
Correct.
into two. You go into two. Everybody like, what do I do now? Everything happens. So, yeah. So it's an interactive thing. It's great. It's great. I wish life were like that. But kind of do it. But yeah. So yeah. But I was more into like, I played regular, weddings, this and that, clubs.
Mhm.
But when Ornette Coleman came on the scene, boom, turned the whole thing around. Just turned it all around.
Great.
And I saw him down a 5-spot. Unbelievable. I couldn't sleep for 2 days afterwards.
Wow, nice.
So like up there, I was like,
Yeah.
So
I got the same with watching. Well, I didn't get to see him live, unfortunately, but Jaco Pastorius did that for me on bass. He just for me, it just created a sound that I hadn't heard on an electric bass. But thank you, Angela. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And Mark, I'm sorry, were you next, Mark? Did you want to, like, if you're in?
Yeah. I mean, I guess kind of going with what you guys were saying, I feel that I have the same thing as you do, Angelo, where it's a lot of people say, "Oh, you're the funny guy, make me laugh," and I can't do that. I can't just like, oh, here's something funny, But if you come into the middle of it, you kind of you're in a conversation with folks, and you're making what the pieces that were there. You're like kind of putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
And you're calling back to things that were said before, and you're adding things about people or things that they thought were funny, and you're adding it all together, and you're able to assemble that in a way where you're reflecting back the ingredients that were thrown out there, and you're making a delicious dish. But I'm not just serving a cake. Here you go. I can't do that, and it's frustrating because I think if you go back to what classical funny guy was or funny person was, the person that, oh, well, I'll tell you what one here, 3 guys walk into a bar, the first guy does this, the second, and it's like a formula that used to be. And that was like, what stand-up comedy was for, years and years, right? Your Borscht Belt, humor, you guy gets up there and tells jokes. I think that we got past that. Like, I don't think even stand-up is not telling jokes. It kind of got to the point where it's taking relatable situations and having unexpected twists and ways to make people feel uncomfortable or just surprised, and taking something they know and putting a spin on it. And I think that's what we've realized that comedy really is, because it touches more people. It's something that's more relatable, and then not all of a sudden. And that's what I'm sure you probably have a good talent for. I know that I can do that as well, but I can't just introduce an artificial phenomenon and bring it without it feeling like it's like I'm forcing it, you know, and I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah, well, you know, all those old jokes, any joke is, I figured this out. Any joke, you set up a tension. There has to be a tension in a joke. There's two or more ideas that don't mesh. They're very different. And you set up these two ideas and you're creating tension. And then the punchline brings the two ideas together. That's what a punchline is. It just pulls them together in a certain way. And then the laugh is the release of the tension. That's
Right,
all
so I mean,
humor is. Humor is just tension and release, just like in music. You know, you play, you get very intense, and you get to the point, and that's it. You know, that last note, you feel much better. And so I don't know who this person was. He cured his cancer by getting a bunch of jokes, and I think they were cassette tapes at the time. Forgot the guy, but he went to a hotel room. He had cancer. He says, well, you know, I'm going to go out laughing. And he took all these humorous things, records, whatever, and he just sat in a hotel room and played them for days, just listening to just nothing but humor. And he cured it. And then I think he died later, of course. But the point is, he got a remission. He got a little stay on the execution. But it was so humor is a very release of tension. That's all it is. And that's, people cry at funeral. I mean, they laugh at funerals. You see people who like, what are you laughing about? Stop that. And the person is laughing. They're not really laughing. They're tense. They're all knotted up. This is a way some people express tension, and they laugh, they giggle or something like that. It's tension. And then they get
what's different about improv maybe is that, you know, you're kind of more invested, if you will, in, you know, the tension is the way of putting it. Like, you know, you've built a situation together, like before the audience's eyes, or before your friends or whoever the audience is. You've built a situation, you know, from the ground up, and they've seen it being built with the blocks, and they've kind of even participated to some degree in building that, right? And now they're really personally involved, and when that release happens, it's something that they've kind of shared in one way, whether it be viewing it or participating in it, you know. But it's that's why I think it's such a great art form, and it's so relatable. So we talked about music, we've talked about you know, everyday life, you know, more spiritual mechanism attachments to it as well. And, you know, just from an everyday, I write software for a living. You know, when I have two other people in the room that you know are on the same wavelength, and I put something out there, and like, you can improv there too, and you're gonna get the sum of more than the parts if you're exchanging ideas and you're in that flow in anything. That software for me, but anything else for others, you know, it's a good feeling when you're there too. It really is awesome, and it's special. You can tap into it. It would be great to be able to turn it on, and that's what I'd love to be able to do, is just flip that
they're
switch and have that
lost.
on.
They're lost. I can't do it. I just can't do it. So, but you know, I was noticing that in all these improv things, all these situations, there is a setup of tension. All of it. I was noticing that the people were doing different things to increase the tension until you got to a point where then it got relaxed again. So basically that's it. Tension and release. It's like the whole universe. You know, it's a wave. That's it. We're riding on the wave.
Shrikant, can I ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead.
So it kind of dovetailing when you're talking about language specifically. So you're deeply fluent in two languages. It's Marathi is your home language. Is that, am I pronouncing that correct? And English, right? So you've done you are deeply fluent in two languages. You've done some improvisation. I know that you like to sing, and you're a conversationalist. So your conversations are not scripted. Is there a difference for you between your mother tongue and improvising in English? Is there a distinction?
So firstly, like my approach to improvisation is that comes very naturally to me. So for me, it's like I have to stop. I say, no, this is a very structured situation. I shouldn't be improvising here. That's the thing that I have to watch out for, because I could, like in most situations, that's what I want to do. And that's what I'm very comfortable doing. So it's a very different kind of a feel. The second thing is that up until the age of 13, I did not know English. So in some ways, so that's one thing. So English, and I spent a lot of time on Marathi. I was very literate. I had some of the top authors in the country on Marathi used to come and read their new novels at my home. So it's a literary family. So it's like I was really immersed in that. So I have very strong background in Marathi. And then for the past 30 years, I've not done anything on Marathi. So my English is much more richer and much more powerful than that. But it's really fascinating, how these things, language works in the brain. The language you grew up speaking, I find that I can go like that right to the heart of the issue faster in Marathi than in English. So what I'm doing now as an experiment is that whenever I'm thinking about anything complex, I do that in English and not translate it. I try to formulate the same thought, complex thought, in Marathi. And the fascinating thing about that, firstly, it is like the most interesting part of that is that language is composed of metaphors. And these two languages have completely two different set of metaphors. The concepts, how they are built, where they come from is all different. So it's like trying to grasp the same thing, one with right hand, one with left hand. So you have a much better grasp. Lots of questions occur to you about the thing you're talking about because you're using two radically different set of concepts in that. So, my Marathi is a little bit rusty, so I have to work a little bit harder, but it comes whenever I put in the effort. So it is like a slower improvisation than English, but it has a power of its own. And because it's like almost having like two different voices in your head who can have a conversation. So I think of it as almost a conversation. So I can have my Marathi Shrikant talking to the English Shrikant about a topic, and I can generate a great dialogue there. And the idea of conversation is very interesting because you can, just like you can build off one another, taking these two different viewpoints, two different set of concepts, allow you to have a conversation, which allows you to have a deeper grasp, deeper exploration of what you're looking at.
Can you give an example of two metaphors, one from Marathi, is that what it is, and English, that the difference, how the difference would be?
Sure. So let's see what would be a good thing. I'll give you an example of how it works in the brain for me. So, one day I've been working on this language, all kind of experimenting with Marathi and English and doing all kinds of work on language. And I got up in the morning and I don't remember what my thought was, but then I said in Marathi to myself that, yeah, vicharala dhar. Dhar is sharpness, cutting edge. Now, the beautiful thing is that moment I say the word dhar, almost the knife and the edge of the knife flashes in my mind. I'm talking about my thought, that cuttingness of the thought. Now, it so happens that sharp is also based on the same metaphor, But what happens is that because I use it all the time, because I'm used to it, the full visceral idea of that cutting edge, the action of you cutting to the heart of the issue in your mind, does not come as powerfully to
It's not as sharp. It's not as sharp.
Yes, exactly. It's
It,
not
it gets dulled when you use the language over it. It sort of dulls it.
exactly. My sharp concept in English has been dulled by too much usage. Whereas my concept of dar, and I am sure the same thing happens to a common Marathi speaker, like person who is using dar, they are
Right.
also blunted by use. But because you're using it this and that, you see, oh, you know what? The cuttingness of your thought. Look at how it feels like. It actually feels like that. And what that means, because the beautiful thing about language is that it goes from outside to inside and then inside to outside. You can say, therefore, I can speak in a cutting way. So my speak, my action is going to be cutting right to the, and that is immediate. That loop completes itself.
Right.
The most powerful thing.
They say that when you speak to a man in a different language, you speak to his brain. But when you speak to him in his own language, you're speaking to his heart.
Yes.
That's an old saying.
And I mean, we have experienced it in a very interesting way. You know, we've been studying Tao Te Ching, Bhagavad Gita, and Gospel of John. And I have those kind of experiences reading these works. I mean, it's Bhagavad Gita is very personal to me because I know Sanskrit. So I'm able to access it in original Sanskrit, which is really stunning. Like at each word I will take up, you know, it's like in each verse, there'll be like 6 words, which will blow me away. Just the words themselves, because their roots and the meaning of the roots will strike me like a hammer, because it's something that I had studied, I know, but have not thought about. So, and then the action of trying to translate that into English. Now, that is very delicate work because it's like you have to get the spirit of it. It's not about getting the literal meaning, because really the literal meaning is based on metaphors. You have to go back to the metaphors in reality and say, if somebody in English was to think about this and have the same spirit, how would they express it? So the expressions would not be a literal translation, but it will be a translation that is true to the spirit of
Right.
what, like, for example, you know, to give you as a side example in music, you know, like Indian music is all improvisation. It is, you know, Indian classical music is all improvisational. And it is improvised from a base, which is incredibly deep. You know, people spend, like, they go and stay with their teacher. This is the tradition. It is firstly purely devotional. It is not about entertainment. It is not about the audience. It is about you speaking to the core of your being, you speaking to God. That's what the music is about. That's what you're doing. The way you learn it is that you go stay with your teacher since the age of maybe 10 or even 6. You sing about 16 hours a day, every day. So you take that entire expression so that that expression is just a part of you. You can speak just like you breathe, you sing. So it is just integrated with you. Now what happens is that there is a rag. Rag is a particular scale which captures a certain emotion. And when a person, a great artist, expresses the rag, it is all their own. It is using the entire scale. All the patterns are, you know, it is consistent with all the patterns. But the expression in each performance, it's a long performance. 45 minutes, 1 hour performance of the rag based on a very small scale, small pattern, which can be sung in about 30 seconds or less than a minute. And you're expanding it to an hour through improvisation. But the style of the mind shows through. That improvisation shows through. So you kind of have to, each person has to make rag their own. They almost think about rag as a person. They will say, I've been trying to talk to this boop rag. And sometimes I get a good glimpse in some of my concerts, but it is, I don't think I'm touching even its feet right now. So it's like they have a very, they have that kind of relationship between a rag. So that is improvisation at a level much, 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 much higher than what we are talking about here. Because what it is that it is saying, take all of your being, all of your experience, and bring it together, take it all in, and let it kind of express it through it. It is a work of tremendous amount of hard work and tremendous amount of courage, more than anything else, the devotion. It is your devotion to your own spirit, your own expression, your own art that produces work of that kind. And
Go
ahead.
I was saying that I took lessons on saxophone with a teacher, and he was telling me that he studied with an old Italian guy, and he went to study saxophone, and the guy just had him do solfeggio. He just had to sing all these exercises, and he says, "When do I get to play the saxophone?" He says, "No, not yet. And he said he sat there singing for about 2 years before the guy let him play the saxophone. But he said then when he played it, it was like it was nothing. The saxophone was just another part of another voice that he had, but all the music was in him, and it all came out. Saxophone was nothing. It was just learning the fingerings and the breathing. So I think that's the way music is passed on from people to people. It's like it's that intense teacher student relationship.
Yeah, what is being passed on? This kind of, it's called Guru Shishya tradition, or in teacher student tradition in Indian context. We looked at this in Bhagavad Gita, this concept as described in Bhagavad Gita. What the Guru is giving the Shishya, what Shishya is getting from the Guru, is actually how to be. It is more than, it is like totality of your person, of saying, how can you be an authentic person? And you're learning everything, and you kind of have to take in everything and get all the pieces. And only when only when you're ready, your Guru will say, okay, now you can sing.
Yep. Hard work.
Mike, what do you think?
You're muted.
I really like the idea of admitting or listing the obstacles that come between the art form and you being able to express it freely. It's not an easy thing to do, is to try to express yourself freely, because there's obstacles in the way. So what causes even the slightest bit of performance anxiety? So if you're on stage and you're a very serious musician and you see some musicians just go off, they're somewhere else. Well, you don't get there overnight, right? So you have the practical aspects of what you can do. I can do my scales, or I can perform, I could read a poem, I can memorize it, but now I have to do it on stage. And I like the idea that I think we're all kind of admitting that there is something between me and me getting out purely. right? That's something that's always, I work with kids, and it's 3 decades of coaching kids. And I've watched over all of those years of teaching kids trying to play chess live. Now, chess, it's like, you think it's a cerebral game. It is and it isn't. It's also a performing art, because you're doing something complex in real time. And I see that a lot of these kids they have a little block. But if you get a kid that's open, like if you watch a kid playing, right? Kids are the real demonstration of what it means to play. Watch a kid who's playing. Well, how do we do that as adults? That's nice. I like the idea that you guys are bringing up you said it takes many, many, many years, and it's not for the audience necessarily, Shrikant. You said it's also for the art form. Well, how do you get there? You can't just snap your fingers and say, I'm gonna work on this discipline. You think it's a combination of a lot of work, and then you also have to be engaged with people who also feel the same obstacles that are in the way. How did you get there? For example, you ask a musician who's playing all the time, well, listen to them and they'll let you know. It was a lot of work.
The way in which it is done in Indian tradition is that, the topmost musician, the most famous musician, the most revered musician, most incredible musician will say, I am learning. At the age of 80, he will say,
wow, there you go.
There is a level of humility, there is because you have to, but partly there is a kind of acceptance of your limits and being open to seeing your limits, holding yourself. It's like, okay, to put it extreme, to put it in a way, the way in which Indian thinking is that you're singing to God. How do you know that you're good? When God comes. If the God doesn't come, sorry, you're not there yet. And if he stays for only short period of time, no, you're still not good enough. That's the standard. So you really have the highest. It's not about you versus other people. It is not about all of that. So there is a level of ambition and love for what you can be, the deepest spirit in you. And there is a tremendous humility of saying, there is more. There is more.
Always.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the thing. One thing always brings the next. When you conquer one thing, whatever it is, a scale, and I got that scale down. But then something in you, so okay, now what do I do? Now I want to do this. It just, one thing brings the other thing. So it never ends. It never ends.
Absolutely. I mean, so I'll make a comment and then we'll go to Jacob. The thing that epitomizes this for me is Newton. See, for me, it's like conceptual, and this is part of one thing. This is like, this is like Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word. So words have power. So it is not something, it is just that people use words badly. So forms are critical. So there is a, so I have a lot of respect for form when it is full of function. So it's when the word becomes flesh. That is a word where you have the deepest spiritual values and deepest real values at the same time. So an example of this is Newton, right? Towards the end of his life, he would say, and this is like after everything he has done, everybody thinks that he's the greatest scientist ever. And he says, I don't know how other people, I'm paraphrasing it. I don't know how other people see me, but as to myself, I seem to have been like a little boy playing on the seashore who discovered a more shinier shell than another.
Mhm.
While the entire ocean lies unexplored. That is the attitude of a great scientist, a great artist, a great human being. So it is, on one hand, saying the world is great. Reality is great. The core of you is great. And that you will relentlessly express yourself and not delude yourself with something which is less. And you will keep doing that. Thank you. Thank you, Angelo. Next up is Jacob. Jacob, go ahead. Jacob, there is some problem with your audio. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Can you be with the fact that you're actually not humble, right? You have stuff, right? You have an image of yourself with your experiences, right? Your background, right? When all of that comes to an end, when that's flushed down the toilet, when it's flushed away in the rain, then there is humility. You get it? I know nothing. There's no me. You get it? No I, no self. Then it's happening, right? And getting back to improv, the fake improv is skill. Skill is based on knowledge, experience, which is limited, right? It's clever. It's cleverness, right? That's fake improv. The true improv, right? The true deep meaning of the word improv is the movement of silence, stillness, nothingness, right? That means no me, right? The action is not coming from Jacob. The words are not coming from Jacob, right? This other intelligence is using the brain body as an instrument that's being played. And this is what it means to be human, a human being, a man, a material body that is channeling the you cosmic energy, right? Which simply refers to a brain that is totally free of the me, which is knowledge. The me is this knowledge, right? It's your beliefs, your experiences, your opinions, your points of view, your philosophy, right? All of that, your identity, right? Which is the past, right? That is preventing humility. And without humility, there is no love, there is no spirit, there is no heart. Improv is not happening. It's only what passes for it, which is a limitation, imitation, and distortion of the truth.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. So what I would say is that I would say a couple of things. This is a very profound point. And we have studied, in 52 Living Ideas, we have studied 3 works: Tao Te Ching, Bhagavad Gita, and Gospel of John. We've spent about 200 hours each on each of them in great amount of detail. And this is the point between spirit and matter, and what is the connection between them, and how it flows. So, for example, the view that Jacob is talking about is very much the Taoist view of saying that, Dao ke Dao, Fei Chang Dao, Ming ke Ming, Fei Chang Ming. So Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. So if you have name, you don't have the Tao. And there are 10,000 things. So you have 10,000 things, but you don't have the Tao. Now, the viewpoint of Gospel of John and Bhagavad Gita is very different. It holds that in the beginning was the Word. So I will use Gospel of John because it is more accessible. Okay, I don't understand the Bible very well. It's very new to me. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him. Without him, nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, if you look at this, in the corresponding part in Bhagavad Gita would be the word Om, the sound Om, which captures at once the nature of Brahma, and it is a way of calling to the Brahma. Not the sound itself, but through the sound, you're trying to reach the Brahma. So both of these focus that the manifestation, it's the function that shapes the manifestations. It is a natural expression of the function. So the word, God producing the word producing the world, word turning into flesh, it is all about this integration between spirit and matter. So that is the Aristotelian view, where you keep taking in the world. The most beautiful formulation of this that I have seen is by Louis Sullivan. He says, life began to break in upon him, a continuously breaking in of life from the outside, and breaking out from the inside was to shape his destiny. So this process of taking in the world and then expressing it as best as you can, and doing that on a continual basis, and that actually says yes to the world, yes to thoughts, yes to spirit at the same time when you have this flow going on. That is the Aristotelian view. Most dominant ideas are Platonic, where there is a separation between the spirit and matter in various ways. So I just wanted to make that point, so that because we've studied this in great amount of detail. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to close up. Mike, you had a comment.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to kind of push back a little bit, Jacob, on a couple of comments that you made. Like I don't mind in the chat when you say that Mike is the block. I understand the whole self-actualization phase of improv, as you know, having the coach get the teacher out of the way. I do take a little exception when you call improv, it's not the real improv, it's the fake improv, because I think you're missing the point that there's an audience here, and the audience are people that are learning improv from the very beginning. And when you come at the art form from the self-actualization phase, you're completely, in my opinion, missing the beginner's mind. So there are people that are listening to the comments that are saying, you know, the coach is the block and that there is a fake improv. I think the beginner or someone who is beginning down that path of maybe wanting to study improv would be turned off from that commentary. That's just my opinion. I kind of experienced this with music, as in terms of what is the correct music to play in terms of genre, things like jazz or classical music. It was heresy to think about playing bluegrass. So I just think that the commentary should take more into mind the audience that's here, not necessarily the end product of what you're looking to do, which is the self-actualization of what you're calling pure improv.
Wonderful.
I'm saying that the improv that you see on television or wherever you see it, right? That's the fake improv. That's not true improv. See, I'm making a distinction.
Why is that fake? You're entertaining masses of people. That's not. Yeah, I don't want to continue the conversation.
I'm not
but
against entertainment.
If you were teaching this message, you would have literally no students in your classroom. Well, that's why you would not have students in your classroom.
It has nothing to do with knowledge or experience.
You're just discounting the 99% of the population that is consuming improv. So I think that's a big mistake.
No, I'm not discounting them. I'm saying, you know, they may have a place to make people laugh. I'm saying I'm making a distinction. Call it what you will. You don't have to call it fake improv. You can call it another name.
Well, you called it fake improv.
Between the operation of skill, knowledge, in other words, knowledge,
correct,
memory, and the operation of a brain that is free from the active memory. There's two two movements, two actions, right? Two ways of being, right? One is from a brain that is highly conditioned, programmed like a robot, and the action is coming from there with all its cleverness, cunningness, skill, experience, operating. And then there's a brain that is free of all that stuff and is operating from pure connection, pure communion with all beings, right? 24/7. And action is coming from that place, from a brain that's totally free, in which there's total clarity, right? So
And
I'm just making a distinction. That's all. You can call
I
it what you
understand,
want,
but
give any word
from
to it.
from someone that's been in the classroom for over 3 decades, I'm trying to imagine you getting these ideas across to adults, forget kids, but adults who are coming to you to learn an art form. So I'm asking, are you making these proclamations as a teacher or someone who's been improvising for many years of your life? Because for someone with the amount of teaching experience I have, I can't imagine the audience that you're trying to grasp with those words. I don't think that they would comprehend them. That's my point. I think you're kind of taking them, picking them up and saying, look, if you want the real path to improv, you need to do this, or think about it this way. When they're taking their first step into something that you're presenting that is miles and miles and miles away from where they are, I don't think you have the audience in mind with these words.
Let's go to Mark next. Mark, go ahead.
I just kind of wanted the same thing. I mean, I think maybe what one person feels is improv is important to them, but I don't think these are the generally accepted terms that are what is improv. I mean, certainly self-actualization is important, and that is a path, a very important path, but that doesn't mean it's also dinner or a bus driver. These are different things, right? And it's a lot of times very simple or it's very easy when somebody has a thought in their head to make it into everything else. It's kind of like the old thing when your tools are a hammer, but problems often look like a nail. I think in this case, I think improv is, as Mike was describing, is the tool that people enjoy, and it's a way to interact and speak with each other. Self-actualization is another. There's no fake improv here, and I also am not happy with that term.
Thank you, Mark. What I would say is that I think Jacob is coming from a Platonic base where there is a division between like spirit and matter. So you can either be living or you can have ideas. Can't have living ideas. So it's like by having words, you actually stop living. That's what he's saying. And that's a very different view. That is a Platonic view. It's actually a dominant view.
No, to correct you, I'm not making a distinction between spirit and matter.
Let me complete.
Okay.
No, because the thing is that, this is my evaluation of everything that you've said, is that you are saying that by simply having a manifestation, between having a practical thing, you destroy the spirit. So it's like you can either have this or you can have that. You can either have matter or you can have spirit. Everything that you're saying is based on this dichotomy. And that's why, that's why I disagree with most of the things that you're saying, though I agree with your extolling of the spirit. I think it deserves to be extolled, but it has an,
spirit can use matter. Spirit can use matter. Right now, I'm using language. That's
Yes.
a material process of the brain. I'm using language, words, knowledge, right? But where is it coming from? Who's doing that? Is Jacob doing that? Jacob being, this bundle of active memory, what he knows, what he's been through, or is the spirit doing that?
Yeah,
Again, the spirit can use words, knowledge for function. It can use the brain body, right?
I mean, the thing is that you're
So, and by the way, there's no such thing as I don't make a distinction, a separation between spirit. That's the conditioning of the world. The world makes a distinction between the body and the spirit. I'm saying that the word spirit, the word soul, the word heart, the word love, the word creativity are just different words for the exact same brain body that is totally free of the me, of this stuff, your garbage in your head. It's the past. It's a dead thing. It's a dead corpse, right?
Right. So look, let me just go ahead and wrap this up. See, what I'm saying, the thing is that I have to evaluate everything that you've said. And my best evaluation is that you're saying stuff is bad, the spirit. So there is a difference, and that's a very different viewpoint. And that's why there is, the disagreement that you're having with so many people.
No, I'm not saying stuff is bad. I'm saying, are you aware, choicelessly aware of what the stuff is doing? That's all, without judgment, without any desire to change it, to modify it, to get rid of it, or in any way tame it, right? Just to be with it, to see it, which brings understanding, which brings insight, which then brings an action, which comes of its own. The very insight brings action.
Yeah,
We won't say what, you'll find out for yourself.
Right. So, I mean, we do have profound disagreements on this matter. So that's what it is. And but anyway, the thing is that I really appreciate all of this kind of, back and forth and, talking about all these concepts. So really, really appreciate that. And Mike, thank you so much for that. And what happens is that all of this has to be embodied. So it's like, if somebody learns how to do improv, to kind of express themselves better, that's a good thing. And then you can build on it, and people can build on it, and people are where they are, and they need to learn what they need to learn. And so really thankful that you're adding so much value to this. So, all right. So next time, I think next Wednesday, it's going to be CJ who's going to be back, and he's going to be talking about epistemological topics. I don't remember exactly what his topic is going to be. I don't think he has announced it yet, but it's always amazing, as always. So Mike, any last thoughts?
No, I had a ball as usual. I look forward to seeing you a month from now when we wrap up, and we'll see what we can create. That should be a lot of fun. I don't have the exact date, the Wednesday before the second Saturday. Is that the way to?
Yes,
Yeah.
It's the Wednesday after the second Saturday is CJ.
Right.
Wednesday before that is you.
There you go. Yeah, we'll do a really nice wrap up and try to see the steps we want to take when that class is over, where we want to go with it. So thank you all for hanging in this long. It was a lot of fun. Really appreciate it.
Ebony, something?
I just wanted to say thank you, Mike. This was a great meetup. I love doing improv. I'm gonna miss doing improv after next month. And hopefully, so the first, huh?
Yeah, we'll get a way to continue, Evanique. If anybody wants to continue, we can find whatever in your local area. And I highly recommend that you get a chance to do it in person if you're comfortable doing that. Not that you can't learn online, you certainly can. It has its benefits, but when you get to be next to another person face to face and kind of see their physicality and hear their voice live instead of a microphone. So we'll find out what's happening. You live in Philly, so I'm sure there's a ton going around. If you're from New York, I mean, I made the joke before, improv is on every street corner. There's a school or a teacher that you can find. So if anybody wants to continue, we'll make sure that happens.
Well, thank you, Mikey.
Yeah.
This was great.
It was great fun.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Joe, you had something.
Yeah, I was just going to say it would be great to have Mike as part of our designing your life series. So anyway, but that was just a quick thought. But yeah,
We'll have to ask
I
him,
wanted to
Joe.
say I wanted to say thank you to him as well.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
wanted to
thank
say
you.
that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, and thank you, Shrikant.
Thank you, Shrikant.
Bye.
Just one
Bye.
thing before we go.
Yeah.
There's a place called Comedy Sports in Philly. If anybody's interested in going, putting together something, it is not sports. It's not like baseball, football. It's like whose
I
line
know-
is it anywhere? two improv teams are, doing their comedy games against each other, and they compete every weekend on Saturday nights. Very good comedy
Yeah.
sports.
Where
We
is it
should,
at?
we should do that.
It's
It's in
on-
Center
it's-
City, right?
It's on
Oh, we
Sampson
should do
Street.
that.
Yeah.
And guys, if you are ever in New York, there is my favorite place is called the Magnet Theater. They have all these teams. My favorite thing is that you buy like one evening, and there are like 7 different shows. It's 7 different groups coming, half an hour skits. Some of them, my favorite of all is, I think it used to be on Thursdays, it's musical improv. So 7 different troops will
Oh, wow.
do musical improv for you.
Wow.
And that's called the Magnet Theater?
Called the Magnet Theater. So I would definitely recommend that.
I think we have to do a road trip up there.
Yeah, I think so. Sure,
think
are you
so.
offering to be our host there?
No, anytime you want to come, just let me know. It would be wonderful.
That'd be
Awesome.
great.
Road trip, Greater
Yeah,
Philadelphia
so-
Thinking Society.
All right,
All right.
take care, folks. Bye.
Joe's the organizer,
Take
we're just
care.
putting it on him.
No, but Mark is the one who is actually.
Mark is the organizer. He's the one that's really focused on like,
I'll
and
put together a comedy sports night. Yeah, I could do
Oh,
that.
that'd be fun.
that would be
Yeah.
great.
I could do that for sure.
Well, folks, it happened here. Mark starting improv. Philadelphia.
With a
Oh.
greater, with
Oh,
a greater
it
Philadelphia.
is. I will warn you. It is fake improv.
Oh,
I tell you, that was a great line.
Good night, folks.
I needed
Good
to smile.
night.
Thank you. That helped wake me up.